Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This is the first episode of story in which the third Hokage finally resolves to do something about Naruto's treatment, and he seeks the assistance of someone known for influencing things from the shadows. When Naruto has everything he needs, including an elder brother who will do anything to protect him, what could possibly go wrong? Please subscribe and smash the like button. Now, let's jump right in. Hiruzen Sarutobi was a patient man. As the currently reinstated third Hokage and renowned kami of Shinobi, it was his job to remain calm and level-headed throughout any and all issues that occurred in order to best serve the village he led. He had maintained his cool throughout two of the great Shinobi wars, the betrayal of his greatest student, as well as the attack of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, which resulted in the loss of the fourth Hokage. Yet as he stood in the dark hospital room of one Naruto Uzumaki, he couldn't bring himself to maintain an emotionless facade. Looking out of the large window, he felt a great sadness wash over him. His village, Konoha, the village created by his sensei, Hashirama Senju, and the proud wielder of the Will of Fire, had become but a shadow of its former self. No longer could the elderly Sarutobi look out onto his village and feel proud of what he saw. No longer could he feel confident in the decisions he had made concerning the small child that now lay battered and broken in a hospital bed, hooked up to every machine possible just to keep him alive. He had grown soft in his old age, and with that softness had come failures to maintain order in his village, and more importantly, failure to keep the promise he had made to Naruto's parents. His failure to keep such a simple promise, one that he was more than capable of keeping, had cost him more than he could ever hope. He had lost his right to call himself a good man that had done all he could for those who needed it, and he had lost his faith in the people of Konoha, all because of one child that most would consider trash. But with this great loss, he had gained something of greater importance. He now had the will and determination to right the wrongs he had let slide, to attempt to make up for his mistakes, and to make sure that from now on Naruto would live the life he deserved. It didn't matter what methods he used, he didn't care about the consequences he would face, so long as the child was freed from the nightmare his life had become. And if Hiruzen was required to use fear and force to do so, then so be it. I promise Naruto, I will change things, no matter the consequences, he whispered to the sleeping boy. I believe that is something that I can assist you with, said a voice from one of the dark corners of the room. Danzo Sarutobi said quietly. It is good to see you arrived so fast. The now named Danzo walked out from the shadows that concealed him. He was an elderly man with both his right eye and right arm wrapped in bandages, a cross-shaped scar on his chin, and a walking cane held firmly in his left hand. Hiruzen wasn't surprised at the fact that the man had been able to enter the room without him noticing. He wasn't known as the Shinobi of Darkness for nothing. I thought I should arrive as quickly as I could, especially since it is not every day that you actually request my presence, Danzo replied. Despite his usually emotionless and cold expression, Danzo had adopted a softer and more concerned look as he observed Naruto. This was not unnoticed by his old friend, and Hiruzen couldn't help but smile in knowing that his longtime rival wasn't without a heart. Will he recover? Danzo asked. Hiruzen sighed quietly. He will make a full recovery, physically, the fox is doing that much at least. I am not too sure about his mental recovery though. The villagers went beyond their usual beatings this time, so I don't know how badly it affected his mind, he answered solemnly. Indeed. I never expected the civilians to go so far, even if there were ninja helping. Hopefully the boy will maintain the fortitude he has held for so long, because if he does not, more problems are sure to arise, Danzo replied. Naruto is strong, and his will is second to none. If anyone can pull through something like this, it's him, Hiruzen said firmly. True, but he is only 7 years old. How much do you think he can take before he snaps? I don't know, Hiruzen answered, taking another glance at the boy's frail form. I understand that it was your men that found him. It was then I owe you thanks. If not for Root, Naruto would surely be dead, and with his death would come the murderous rage of the Kyuubi. There is no need to thank me, old friend. I was only doing what was best for the village. Although I am still concerned by you allowing me to keep Root up and running in secret, Danzo said, hinting at the unasked question that had been circling his mind for a long time. Hiruzen smirked, an action that slightly put Danzo on edge. I may not approve of all of the training methods your Root operatives are put through, but I would be a fool if I denied that they were effective. I allowed you to maintain it for this exact circumstance, he explained calmly. So you allowed Root to stay so it could be used to save a single child? Danzo asked in minor irritation. Of course not, although that was a fortunate bonus. No, I allowed Root to stay because I have finally reached my rope's end. I have grown soft, Danzo, weak even, and in that weakness I have allowed the village to grow weak. The Shinobi are nothing more than highly trained laborers, and the civilians have become pompous and self-centered under the protection of our walls. This is no longer the Konoha that Hashirama envisioned. It is a joke, and I intend to fix that. I am no longer going to be pushed around by the narrow-minded fools that think they hold power in this village. I am the Hokage, and what I say is law. Things will change, whether they accept it or not, and the first change will be making up for my failure to uphold Minato's dying wish, Sarutobi explained with conviction. That's all good, and I admire your new outlook on things, but where does my Root fit into things? Danzo asked curiously. An almost wicked smile formed on the elderly Hokage's face. What better way to heal a dying tree than by starting at the roots? I do not intend to officially reinstate Root, and so long as it remains in the shadows, it can be of use to me. With your help, we could reshape Konoha into something to be respected and feared, but also loved and admired. And what if I refuse to help you? What if I use this as an opportunity to stab you in the back and take the title of Hokage all for myself? Danzo inquired seriously. You and I both know that you aren't that cold-hearted. Plus, with us working together like this, we will be able to have a say in what goes on in each other's area of the village. I get to alter how Root members are trained slightly, while you help me shape up the actual Shinobi forces into something worthy of the village, Hiruzen said with a smile. I am wondering if you have perhaps lost your mind, but if since you are beginning to think more like me, I wouldn't so casually call you crazy just yet, Danzo muttered quietly. What was that? Hiruzen asked with a glare. Nothing, he answered quickly. So do you wish to aid me in rebuilding this village? Danzo remained silent for a few moments, thinking over everything that Hiruzen had said. He could definitely see the benefits of such an alliance between them, and with the old Sarutobi allowing him to make suggestions to how Konoha did things, it opened up several opportunities. For one, his influence on things would carry more weight without him ever having to put himself directly in the spotlight, and he would be able to continue his shadowy activities with Root more leniently. Pausing his thoughts momentarily, Danzo took another look at the practically comatose boy whose room they occupied. He didn't care all too much for the boy, even though he knew of the boy's parents, and was generally indifferent to what happened to him. If it was possible, he would gladly take the boy and train him as a weapon, as most Jinchuriki were, but should he be unable to obtain the boy, it would not be a huge loss. But the most important unasked question was still lingering in his mind. Why had Sarutobi decided to ask for his help so soon, and what did it have to do with the boy? I accept, but first I need to know how this involves Naruto, he finally replied. Naruto can wait. I have plans for him, but they can wait until after he has recovered. However, you should know that he will play a key role in changing the village, if he wishes to, of course, Hiruzen said. Danzo gave his friend an odd questioning stare. You won't force him to be a part of it, he asked. No, I will not. Naruto will choose for himself, although I don't think he will hesitate to accept once I tell him what I want him to do, the Hokage answered with a gentle smile. Yes, the boy is quite insistent on becoming a ninja. A chance to personally help the Hokage make the village better would be nothing short of a dream come true for him, Danzo reasoned. Hopefully he sees it that way. A calm silence settled on the room for a few minutes as the old rivals processed the fact that they were now allies once again. The only sound that interrupted the still night was the continuous beeping of the heart monitor connected to Naruto. I have something to show you. I was planning on keeping it a secret, But with this new alliance, I believe it best to show my trust and allow you access to Root headquarters, Danzo said quietly. I also believe that what I wish to show you will come in handy, especially if your plans for Naruto are what I think they are. Hiruzen nodded. Just make sure you have some of your men guard this room. At least I can rest easy knowing that Root won't be swayed by their own emotions, he said. I have had my men guarding it ever since he arrived. I might not care what happens to the boy, but I will not risk someone putting the village in danger just for something as petty as revenge, Danzo stated firmly. Hiruzen calmly walked over to Danzo and placed a hand on his left shoulder. As soon as he did, they both vanished in a swirl of leaves. Root headquarters was exactly how Hiruzen expected it to be. A dark and damp series of large tunnels that extended under most of Konoha, allowing quick access to most of the more important locations of the village, including the Hokage Tower. It wasn't surprising to realize that Danzo had been operating right under everyone's nose, in a rather literally sense of the phrase. Without a word, Danzo began walking down one of the numerous tunnels, the old Sarutobi following shortly after. They walked for several minutes, neither saying a word to the other, and Hiruzen taking his time to observe the underground structure that had somehow gone unnoticed by most everyone in the village. He of course had known about it, but until now, he was under the assumption that it had been abandoned and unused for many years. Oh, how wrong he was. As they continued through the dark tunnels, Hiruzen noticed that the walls were quickly becoming much cleaner than they had been, along with several dull lights illuminating the tunnel up ahead. He guessed that they were finally reaching one of the actual base structures, of which he was sure there were many scattered throughout the underground maze. This is the medical section of Root. We usually only have to use it for new recruits, but thankfully it is fully capable of handling anything the hospital on the surface can, Danzo explained casually. He quickly led the Hokage to the furthest medical room within the facility. Sarutobi noticed almost immediately that temperature began declining drastically the closer they got to the room. It became concerning when each room they passed appeared to have frost forming of the observation windows, and even more so when he noticed frost forming on the walls and floor. He could just feel that whatever Danzo was about to show him would be something to amaze. They quickly reached the door of the furthest room, which had been almost completely frozen shut. The hallway that they stood in was ridiculously cold, with ice forming on almost every surface. Hiruzen considered using a fire jutsu to warm himself up, but he quickly stomped that idea out of his head. You might want to start circulating fire chakra through yourself. It's several degrees colder inside the room, and I am not in a position to explain how the Hokage froze to death, Danzo said with concealed amusement. Hiruzen nodded before taking a deep breath and blowing out a steady stream of fire, which melted a small amount of ice on the floor. He was shocked to see the melted puddle of water quickly refreeze within seconds, and he was beginning to wonder just how cold it was in here. A quiet sigh of relief escaped him as he circulated the fire chakra throughout his body, its heat serving to warm him up in moments. Once he was ready, Danzo opened the door. Unsurprisingly, it required some effort to break the ice that had formed around the doorframe, and eventually the old warhawk was forced to use a small fire jutsu just to open the door far enough. The cold air that was instantly sucked from the room hit Hiruzen dead on and nearly froze the old man solid, something that Danzo thought of as amusing if the smile on his face was any indication. What on earth do you have locked up in here that can do this? Hiruzen asked as his teeth chattered uncontrollably, a rather comedic sight to see. That Danzo answered simply as he pointed to a bed in the center of the room. Hiruzen looked inside the room and towards where Danzo was pointing, his eyes widening to comical proportions as soon as he realized what he was looking at. Lying in the bed in the center of the room was a young boy, probably a couple of years older than Naruto. He appeared to be in rough shape since most of his body was covered in bandages. The most heavily bandaged areas appeared to be the boy's left arm, right leg, and his eyes. Turning back to his old rival, Hiruzen gave the man a stern look. Explain, he said calmly. I had Root raid one of Orochimaru's bases, which I found within Fire Country a few months ago, Danzo began. They didn't find anything useful. All the test subjects had been slaughtered and mostly frozen. A lot of the base itself had been destroyed and frozen as well. Nothing in the base was salvageable, or so we thought. The old warhawk took a deep breath of his own before breathing out a small stream of fire. It was incredibly cold inside the room after all. We found this boy locked away in what appeared to be a sort of bunker-type room that was fitted with incinerators. Fortunately, the incinerators had been frozen, and the boy was still alive. From what we gathered, it seems he was one of Orochimaru's more powerful test subjects that failed miserably, he explained. What was he trying to accomplish? With an ice user, the Hokage questioned seriously. Danzo snapped his fingers, and a root agent quickly entered the room holding a small file. The man quickly handed the file to Danzo before bowing and walking out of the room. The crippled elder handed Hiruzen the file and gestured for him to have a look. From what we did manage to dig out of the base's still functioning computers, the boy was not originally an ice user. It seems Orochimaru was playing with fusing chakra natures to make Kekkei Genkai, but he was also attempting to create something else entirely. Hiruzen's eyes widened as he read further through the file. He was trying to create a Rinnegan, he said in mild shock as he remembered that the boy's eyes were heavily bandaged. Did he succeed? He asked quickly. No, Danzo answered in slight disappointment. Although, that doesn't mean he failed either, he added as he once again gestured to the file. The elderly Hokage quickly began to read through the remaining notes of the file, his eyes narrowing more and more with each page he read. Once he finished reading it, he closed it and sighed in relief. Well, it's not a Rinnegan, thank Kami for that, because I don't think anyone could stop him if he obtained that kind of power. However, this is a drastic change from his original goal of obtaining a Sharingan. Perhaps he has given up on it, Sarutobi said hopefully. I doubt it. This is more than likely a mere side project for him. It would be devastating if he possessed both a Sharingan and a Rinnegan, Danzo countered. Still, the power this boy possesses is incredible. Even if he can't gain full access to what is theorized in these notes, he will still be a force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, I can't see him being able to use his abilities to their full potential. The raw amount of chakra it would require to do so without killing him would be impossible to possess without becoming a Jinchuriki. Danzo smirked. That's why I need your help. With your consent, I am confident in my ability to train this boy to be able to use his powers to the best of his abilities. In fact, I think we could even incorporate him into your plan for Naruto. The two have the potential to become incredibly powerful shinobi. It only makes sense that they work together, he suggested with a smile. Are you confident this will work? Not that I don't see your point, but we aren't even sure that either of the boys will agree to go along with it. Don't worry about this one. He already agreed to my training several weeks ago. All that's left is to introduce the two and let things go from there. What if they do not get along? Hiruzen asked. You and I both know that Naruto has an irritating ability to get people to like him, one way or another. If we are lucky it will work, and we will have a highly powerful two-man team at our disposal, Danzo answered. Very well, but I will only use them in our plans if they agree to it. I might have had a change of heart, but I will not force children to do something they do not wish to do, Sarutobi replied. So be it. I suggest we return to our duties and think over what we plan to do for the future of the village. We can meet again tomorrow to discuss things in finer detail. That sounds reasonable. I'll be going then. I still need to check on Naruto once more before I return to the office, Hiruzen said wearily. Before you go, I need to ask you something, Danzo said quickly. Sarutobi paused and looked questioningly at his old friend. And that would be? Do you know? The Warhawk asked seriously, gesturing subtly to his bandaged arm. The old Hokage smiled kindly and nodded his head. Yes, I know exactly what you have under those bandages, old friend, and I don't hold it against you. The Uchiha clan needed to be taken out, and I was too weak to do what needed to be done. I don't blame you for making the most of an opportunity like that. It is was ninja do, is it not? He said quietly. Who knows, it might be invaluable later on in our plans. I suppose that is one way of looking at it. I will see you tomorrow then. Hopefully Naruto will have recovered by then, Danzo said before he walked out of the uncomfortably cold room. Hiruzen took another look at the boy who was on the bed. From the file he had read, he knew that boy was 9 years old, and he didn't match any blood samples they had, both standard and classified. If the old Sarutobi were to wager a guess, he'd say that his traitorous student had created the boy from scratch. That meant that the boy could potentially belong to multiple clans at the same time, or none at all. It also meant that he would have to be placed into a clan before others tried to claim him for their own. This kind of thing had happened before, where orphans or clanless individuals showed extreme potential in the ninja arts and were sought out by powerful clans in hopes of bolstering their reputation or power. If he was created from the blood of multiple clans, then there would be chaos, unless, of course, he was already enlisted into the care of a clan. A sly smile formed on the old man's wrinkled face, a childish gleam shimmering in his dark eyes. He knew exactly how to fix this problem in a way that would not only save him from many a headache, but also push both the boy and Naruto closer together. A smug expression took over his features as he mentally patted himself on the back for being such a cunning old man. When Naruto woke up, he would be in for one hell of a surprise. As soon as he woke up, Naruto knew exactly where he was. If it wasn't for the fact that he was still hurting all over, then it would be the ever-present smell of bleach and blood that always accompanied the hospital. This time, however, there was one small difference: it was freezing cold. Naruto had been in the hospital enough times to know that the temperature never got too cold, and this definitely classified as cold. Damn, they locked me in a freezer, didn't they? He muttered in irritation. The villagers had always hated him, and the numerous beatings he had received from them had cemented that point into his mind. But locking him inside of a freezer and leaving him to die was a new level of low, even for them. He didn't even know there was a freezer in the hospital large enough to lock him in. A quiet chuckle disturbed Naruto's inner thoughts. Opening his bright blue eyes, he realized that he wasn't actually locked in a freezer, just a really cold hospital room. The chuckle got louder as he looked around curiously, until his eyes locked onto the elderly Hokage sitting in the corner of the room. The old man was smiling warmly, smoking on a pipe, with a large fur coat draped over him. Yeah, laugh it up, old man. It's fine when you aren't the one freezing, Naruto said angrily as he jumped out of his hospital bed. He walked over to one of the chairs in the room, which had his clothes folded on it. He quickly got dressed, only to find that it didn't help with the cold, and he was still shivering slightly. Hey old man, why is it so cold in here? He asked loudly. Sorry, I can't help it, answered a meek voice from behind him. Naruto spun around quickly and locked his eyes onto the third occupant of the room. It was a boy, probably a couple of years older than him, with short shaggy gray/white hair. He couldn't make out much else in regards to the boy's appearance, since most of the boy's body was covered in bandages, especially his eyes. Who are you? He asked loudly. Apparently, he couldn't say much without being overly loud. Naruto, I want you to meet your adopted brother. This is Izo Uzumaki, Sarutobi said with a mischievous smirk on his face. The overly loud yell that quickly followed was like music to his aging ears. Things were going to change, and it was going to be fun. Naruto stared at the Hokage in curiosity. The old man was still smiling warmly, and gave an occasional chuckle at his curious expression, but Naruto was still suspicious. Not 2 minutes had passed since he had been told of his new adopted brother, and so far, no one had said anything. He himself was busy trying to search the Hokage's expression for sign of this being some cruel joke, while the old man in question continued to smile as if he hadn't said a thing. The apparently named Izo hadn't so much as moved since the announcement. From what Naruto could guess, due to the large amount of bandages wrapped around the boy's eyes, he was listening intently to what was going on within the room. For a minute or so, Naruto actually wondered what it would be like to not be able to see, only to realize that it must have been horrible and quickly banished such thoughts to the deep dark parts of his mind. Is everything okay? Izo asked quietly. He had begun to worry about the awkward silence that had settled upon the room. Everything is fine, Izo, although I think it might take Naruto here a while to process things, Hiruzen said calmly. Old man, what the hell is going on here? What do you mean my adopted brother? Does this mean I was adopted? Naruto asked in slight shock as he stared at Hiruzen hopefully. The elderly Sarutobi chuckled at the boy's energy. Only he was capable of acting as if nothing had happened less than a day after being put in the hospital. "No, Naruto, you weren't adopted," he answered, resulting in the blonde's hopeful expression to fall from his face. "But Aizo here has been adopted into your clan," he added, gaining a confused look from the boy. "But I don't have a clan," Naruto said quietly. The smile on the Hokage's face widened ever so slightly. "Actually, as the only Uzumaki in the village, you have the ability to adopt people into your family. Should your family gain enough members, then it would be eligible for a spot on the council and recognition as a clan," he explained. Naruto gained a thoughtful expression as he processed the information he was being told. He may have been bright for his age, even if most would argue otherwise, but he was still only 7 years old. No matter how bright he was, it still took him a while to completely understand things. "So if I can adopt people into my family, then how did he get adopted without me knowing?" he asked while pointing to Aizo. Hiruzen let out another light chuckle. "Because I adopted him into your family, and yes, I can do that. Being Hokage does have its advantages after all," he said, adding the last part quickly when he saw Naruto about to say something. "But that's unfair," Naruto whined. "Oh, is it now? Am to understand that you do not want Aizo to be your brother?" Sarutobi asked with a raised eyebrow. Naruto opened his mouth to say something but quickly snapped it shut and thought. He turned and looked at the bandaged boy across the room, who remained quiet and calm as he listened to what was being said. "No offense, but I don't know anything about you," he said apologetically. Aizo shrugged nonchalantly. "That's fine, I don't know you either, so call it even," he replied casually. "Perhaps you two should get better acquainted. I'll return later and you can decide whether or not you wish for me to make the adoption permanent," Hiruzen suggested. "I also have some other matters of which to discuss with the both of you, but those can wait for later. For now, why don't you show Aizo around the village, Naruto? He hasn't been here before and I'm sure he would be grateful." Naruto grumbled at the old man. "Fine, but it won't do much good if he can't see you. Don't need to worry about that. I'm sure he'll manage," the aging Hokage said as he looked to the ash-gray-haired boy. "Won't you, Aizo?" "Sure, I guess," the boy answered simply. "Good. I will see you both this afternoon," Hiruzen said before leaving the boys alone in the still, very cold room. Another awkward silence fell upon the room as Naruto studied the older boy cautiously. Aizo, for his part, was content to wait for Naruto to say something, but it also seemed that the blonde was more than happy to keep staring at him. Aizo calmly reached up and pulled apart the bandages wrapped over his eyes, making a small gap over his left eye. Naruto instantly tried to peer at what was underneath the bandages, but the gap was too thin and the bandages overshadowed whatever was underneath them, making it impossible to see his eye. That only made things worse for Naruto since he always hated not knowing things, and if this guy was going to be his brother then he wanted to know as much as he could. "I do believe it's considered rude to stare," Aizo said quietly. "Says the guy who's staring right back at me," Naruto said quickly. "Touché. Perhaps we could start on the tour you were meant to give me. I would like to know more about my new home," he replied casually. "Okay, but after we get something to eat 'cause I'm starving," the blonde exclaimed. "Fair enough. Got anything in mind? Do you like ramen?" Naruto asked hopefully. Aizo tilted his head slightly in confusion. "What's a ramen?" he asked. And just like that, Naruto fainted. Hiruzen openly laughed at the scene of Naruto fainting as he watched the two boys through the crystal orb on his desk. He knew that there were going to be comedic moments between the two, especially after he had a short talk with Aizo while they waited for Naruto to wake up, but he never expected to be laughing this early in the plan. "It's good to see you're enjoying yourself, Sarutobi," said Danzo as he walked out of the shadows in the far corner of the room. "Can you blame me when we're leaving Naruto of all people to teach Aizo the basics of normal life? We left one of the most uncivilized people in the village to teach an uncivilized boy how to be civilized. If anyone learned of this, we would be the laughingstock of the village," Hiruzen said cheerfully. "Indeed, but at least they seem to be getting along, or at least they were until Naruto fainted," Danzo replied with a smirk. Don't worry, he will be awake soon, and I'm sure he will be dragging Izo to Ichiraku ramen as quickly as humanly possible. If that boy turns out to have the same addiction as the Jinchuriki, then this Ichiraku ramen will become the richest business in the elemental nations. Power won't matter when they buy the world out from under us, the old warhawk said with mock concern. Hiruzen's eyes widened. Let us pray that Izo does not take a liking to ramen. Well, theatrics aside, how fares Naruto? Did he recover mentally? Danzo asked. From what I've seen so far, Naruto has simply brushed the incident off as he has the others. There may be repercussions later on, but until it happens, we will have no idea how seriously it affected him. As it stands, I'm not even sure Naruto actually remembers what they did to him. He did wake up thinking they had locked him in a freezer after all, the Hokage said solemnly. Yes, it seems Izo has gained enough control over his chakra to stop freezing things solid while he is awake. Unfortunately, he is still unstable while unconscious. Hopefully this will correct itself over time with the correct training, the crippled elder said. Hopefully. For now, why don't we discuss what we plan to do with our newfound alliance? I would like to start on minor changes to route if that's okay, Hiruzen said calmly. Is there any particular reason you wish to begin changing routes so soon? Danzo asked. Hiruzen smiled mischievously. My plans will require you and your organization to kickstart things. After that, I will require your personal insight on ways to improve the village. I trust we can come to an understanding on most things, he said happily. Danzo smirked at his old friend and sat down in the chair opposite Hiruzen. I think that this will be a very beneficial arrangement. For both of us, I think so too, agreed Sarutobi. What the hell do you mean you don't know what ramen is? Naruto yelled in disbelief. Izo stared at Naruto in irritation as he held his hands over his ears. He was not aware that people could be so loud, and thanks to several weeks of being blindfolded, his hearing had been amplified, making the yelling even more unbearable. He was beyond thankful that he was out of the test facility, but if this was the torture that he would be forced to suffer with to be free, well, let's just say he'd rather die. Would you mind being quieter? Your yelling hurts my ears, he said calmly. And to answer your question, I have never heard of ramen before, and therefore I don't know what it is. Naruto just stared at the bandage-covered boy in shocked disbelief. The concept of someone not knowing what ramen was the closest thing to a real-life horror story he had ever heard of. It almost didn't compute in his mind. Blasphemy, he yelled loudly, making Izo grit his teeth. I am taking you to Ichiraku ramen right now, he exclaimed just as loudly before literally dragging Izo from the room. The looks the boys received from those they passed in the hospital's hallways were odd. As it turned out, seeing a small blonde-haired boy drag a heavy bandaged boy through the hospital was not a common occurrence. Many they walked past gave the two looks of confusion and concern, until they realized exactly who Naruto was. Once they did, the confusion turned to disgust and the concern turned to hatred. Luckily, any negative looks aimed at Naruto didn't last very long. Many were traded for worried looks at the heavily bandaged Izo, who appeared to be getting guided along forcefully by the blonde child. Despite this, Naruto continued to lead Izo out of the hospital and onto the streets, heading straight for his all-time favorite place to eat. It didn't take long for them to reach Ichiraku ramen, something that Izo was grateful for. Being guided around like a blind person by a loud brat that was supposed to be his new brother was not something he took pride in. Either way, he was glad to know that Naruto hadn't outright refused the Hokage's proposal. He didn't know what it was like to have a little brother, or any family for that matter, but he was intrigued by the idea of having one. Welcome to Ichiraku ramen, Naruto proclaimed loudly. Izo actually lost his cool, pun intended, and smacked Naruto up the side of his head. I can read perfectly fine, so stop yelling everything, he said harshly. Naruto rubbed the spot where Izo had hit him and pouted. You know, if you want me to adopt you as my brother, you're going to have to be nice. So far you're walking on thin ice, he said crossly. If you even want me to consider accepting the idea of being your brother, then you're gonna have to stop being so loud, Izo countered. You aren't my brother yet, so you can't tell me what to do, Naruto yelled. If you don't stop yelling, I'll be your murderer. Aizo yelled back. Well, you're yelling at me too now, so you can't get angry at me for yelling. You were yelling first. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Both of you stop yelling or else, screamed a female voice from the ramen stand. Naruto and Aizo stopped yelling at each other and turned to see who had interrupted their argument. Standing in front of the ramen stand was a young girl in her early to mid-teens. She had long brown hair, brown eyes, and a white bandana tied around her head. She was standing there glaring at the boys while holding a ladle in a somehow threatening manner. "Oh, hey how are things?" Naruto asked casually, trying to hopefully reduce the tension that hung in the air. "Things were fine, until you decided to start a very loud argument with a poor injured boy." "Why would you pick a fight with someone who can't even see?" she asked crossly. Aizo smirked at his luck. Apparently, this girl hadn't been around to hear him say that he could read fine, meaning that he could use this to his advantage. He could tell that this girl had some form of connection with Naruto, and as had been the oh-so-elegant saying of old, payback was indeed a bitch. But he can see, and he isn't even hurt that bad. Naruto whined pitifully. Aizo swiped blindly at Naruto and missed by a long shot. Growling in irritation, he attempted several more times before sighing in defeat and hanging his head. "Hey, or whatever your name is, could you please hit him?" he asked while looking around blindly. "I'd do it myself, but I can't see him." "No problem, answered as she walked up to the boy in question. Naruto smiled nervously, holding his hands up in surrender as he looked at the ladle she held tightly in her hand. Normally, such an item would be incapable of registering as threatening in any sense of the word. However, when said ladle is in the hands of an angry the dangerous possibilities were endless. "You wouldn't hit me, would you?" he asked weakly. The sadistic smile that formed on Iam's face, combined with the murderous glint in her brown eyes, was all the response Naruto needed before he began to run from the older girl. "I hate you," a battered and bruised Naruto said weakly to a particularly smug-looking Aizo. "I am sure you do," Aizo replied with a smile. Both boys were sitting at Ichiraku ramen, Naruto making a point to sit as far away as he could from Aizo. Unsurprisingly, Iam had caught Naruto shortly after his break for freedom and had proceeded to beat him senseless. She had then gone back to guide the poor blind Aizo into Ichiraku's while promising to give him a free bowl of ramen and banning Naruto from eating any ramen for a week. "Here you go," Iam exclaimed cheerfully as she placed a large bowl of ramen in front of Aizo. Aizo smiled in appreciation as he reached out and brought the bowl closer. His smile grew wider as he heard Naruto grumble and mutter something about stupid big brothers, and so he took his sweet time in devouring the first mouthful he managed to get. Since he was remaining blindfolded so as to maintain the act in front of Iam, it took slightly longer than it should have for him to actually manage said task. "Okay, I really hate you," Naruto said. "And now I'm very sure you do," Aizo replied casually. "Are you even going to eat that?" Naruto asked while staring longingly at the bowl of ramen sitting before the bandaged boy. I suppose I could eat it for the sole purpose of pissing you off," Aizo began with a thoughtful expression. "But I find myself not particularly liking this ramen stuff, so I think I'll pass." Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously as he forgot all about the injuries he had sustained from Iam. "Are you saying that you plan on wasting a perfectly good bowl of ramen simply because you don't like it?" he asked angrily. His eyes widened in shock as Aizo pushed the bowl across the bench, allowing it to slide right in front of him. Naruto looked from the practically untouched bowl of heavenly goodness to the half-mummified and clearly insane person sitting on the other end of the bench. He repeated this action several times before giving Aizo a curious stare. "What are you playing at?" he asked accusingly. Aizo shrugged. "Nothing really. I don't like ramen, and you do. I figure it'd be better than leaving it to go to waste, and since Iam said you weren't allowed to buy ramen for a week, I thought you'd appreciate this one free bowl," he explained in a careless tone. Naruto stared at Aizo as if he had just handed him the Hokage's hat on a silver platter, which in Naruto's weird world of opinions was somehow equal to receiving a free bowl of ramen. Without even a single word of thanks, he inhaled. the contents of the bowl within seconds, letting out a content sigh quickly after. It didn't take long for his eyes to widen in fear as Aizo did something that would forever mark him as number one on his prank list. Naruto took my ramen and ate it. Aizo yelled, adding a few quiet sniffles at the end for extra effect. Naruto! Yelled angrily from the back room of the store. As Naruto tried to make yet another break for it, Aizo reached out and grabbed him by his collar as he ran past. The older boy leaned over with a smug smirk until he was close enough that Naruto could literally smell the blood that was under all the bandages, something that slightly concerned the blonde. "This is for not being quiet after I asked you nicely," he whispered. "Ignore me again and you'll end up with something much worse than a mere ass-kicking and lack of ramen." He calmly let go and leaned back, allowing Naruto to run off to who knows where. A few seconds, and several loud crashing sounds later, Ayam appeared from the back room. She looked at Aizo, who was calmly sitting on his chair, and then to the empty bowl that had been left in front of the chair that Naruto had been sitting in. Her eyes narrowed in fury, and she grabbed a much larger ladle than she had the first time she beat Naruto. "Which way did he go?" she asked Aizo quickly, only realizing her mistake a second after the words had left her mouth. I don't know. I'm so sorry," Aizo answered meekly while his bottom lip trembled. Ayam's eyes widened. "Oh Kami, I am so sorry." "I forgot," she said, running over to Aizo and giving him a comforting hug. Aizo grinned victoriously as he wrapped his arms around the older girl. The sound of a man clearing his throat loudly made Ayam jump away from Aizo, much to his disappointment. "Don't you have a certain thieving brat to chase down?" the old man asked Ayam. "Oh Naruto, yeah, I'll get right on that. But can you look after Aizo? He can't see, so keep an eye out for him, okay?" "Thanks Dad," she said quickly before running off in the direction she thought Naruto had gone. An awkward silence befell the ramen stand, making Aizo wonder exactly how common awkward silences were in the outside world. He didn't move, and neither did the old man, who he could tell was staring expectantly at him, as if awaiting some answers. "You heard, didn't you?" Aizo asked. "What, that you could see? Or what you said to Naruto as he made a run for it?" the old man asked calmly. "Either," the ash-haired boy replied. "I have kept an eye on you and Naruto since you got within 100 feet of this ramen stand. I'm not sure if I can hold anything you did to him against you, since I am more than aware of his excessive volume. However, I am not sure I can forgive you for lying to my daughter and using said lie to get a pity hug from her," the old man said. "You are a disturbingly observant old man, you know that, right?" Aizo asked. "I'll take that as a compliment." "Now, are you going to apologize for deceiving my daughter?" the man asked with a pointed glare. "I ain't apologizing for anything. I might not be able to see very well, but I know cute when I see it, and Ayam fits that description," he said, crossing his arms defiantly. The tension in the area rose a significant amount as the old ramen chef continued to glare at the boy. Neither of them paid much attention to the high-pitched screams that sounded off in the distance, but it did make Aizo smirk slightly. That's when he realized something, which in turn raised a very important question. "How did I not notice you?" he asked calmly. "You're a great many years too young to learn about the ancient techniques passed down to every father in the elemental nations," the man answered. "Interesting. Such a thing could do with some further investigation. All I need is a wife in a few years," Aizo said thoughtfully before turning to stare straight at the old man. "What are the chances of Ayam being single in around 8 years?" he asked with a mischievous grin. The old man's face morphed into a much similar grin. "I think that is something you should ask her, don't you think, Ayam?" he asked cheerfully. The potent killing intent that was suddenly directed at Aizo was without a doubt one of the worst experiences of his short life, and that's after being a test subject for Orochimaru. He had heard about the unmatched power that was bestowed upon females when angered, but until now, he didn't believe that it held much significance. Turning around quickly, he was met with a clearly angry Ayam dragging a thoroughly beaten Naruto. He still didn't know how she was managing to make a ladle seem so threatening, but she was doing it nonetheless. "Hey Ayam," he began nervously. Now I'm sure you can find the funny side of this, right? Said girl smiled brightly as she carelessly dropped Naruto. Oh, I can definitely see the funny side of it, and it involves me beating the crap out of a blind kid, she said sweetly. Despite his best efforts, Aizo ended up suffering the same fate as Naruto. It took both boys several hours before they were once again capable of walking to the Hokage's office, both vowing to undo the adoption made by the old, and clearly insane, old man. Are you sure about this? Danzo asked unsurely. Absolutely, Hiruzen answered happily. Both elderly men were sitting in the Hokage's office, having not long since concluded their discussion on how to start their plans to change Konoha for the better. Needless to say, Danzo wasn't all too sure about whether or not it would actually work. But after everything that had been discussed between them, he couldn't find any major flaws. So now all we need to do is wait around for the boys to get back and see what their answer is, Danzo said calmly. Yes, but don't worry, I am confident that they will agree. They probably had a great day of brotherly bonding, Sarutobi said with a warm smile. I hope so. Most of the plans we have agreed on revolves completely around them. Should they refuse, we will have to rethink a lot of things. I do wish you would just let me use my Sharingan to deal with them, Danzo replied grumpily. I may not hold those eyes against you, but I will be damned if I let you use them on Naruto and his newly adopted brother, the Hokage said crossly. Danzo was interrupted from replying to Hiruzen when a loud crashing sound came from outside the office. This was followed by what sounded like a high-pitched squeal as a large orange object was thrown through the door. Hiruzen and Danzo both stared at the orange object that had landed rather unceremoniously on the floor, both quickly realizing that it was a bloody and beaten Naruto. Hiruzen gave the old war hawk a nervous smile as he chuckled quietly. He prayed that this was all just a big misunderstanding, an out-of-context disagreement between the boys that wouldn't completely ruin his plans. Looking to the doorway, he watched as an equally battered and bruised Aizo staggered into the office, glaring at the younger blonde lying on the ground. Old man, I don't think me and Aizo can be brothers, Naruto said with a pained cough. I think I agree with him, for the moment anyway, Aizo muttered. Sarutobi and Danzo shared a worried look before turning back to the boys with kind smiles, or a freaky-looking grin in Danzo's case. What happened to you boys? Hiruzen asked. Well, Aizo here decided it would be a good idea to play the poor blind kid act that got me banned from eating ramen at Ichiraku's for a week, and got me beaten up by Iam. Then he tricked me into eating his free ramen, which got me beaten up by Iam for a second time, Naruto explained angrily. And why are you injured, Aizo? Danzo asked. I may or may not have asked Tucci about the chances of Iam being single in a few years, which she may or may not have overheard and beat the crap out of me for, Aizo answered casually. That, and I tricked her into hugging me by playing the blind kid act, he added. You tricked a girl into giving you a free bowl of ramen, beat up Naruto, and give you a hug, all by pretending to be blind? Sarutobi asked curiously. No, I tricked a cute girl into those things. One must not forget that she is cute, Aizo said proudly. Aren't you a little young to be thinking about girls? Danzo asked dryly. I was speed grown in a test tube, you old cripple. I doubt age works the same for me. As it stands, I'm only 10, but mentally I could be anywhere, the ash-haired boy countered. I suppose that makes some sort of sense, but don't you think calling me a cripple is somewhat hypercritical, the Warhawk replied while subtly gesturing to the boy's own bandaged limbs. Hey, who is this guy, old man? Naruto asked loudly, pointing at Danzo. Hiruzen chuckled lightly. This is Danzo Shimura, a very old friend of mine and a council elder. He was also the unofficial legal guardian of Aizo until he was adopted into your family, he explained. Yeah, about that, we have decided against making it permanent, so you can just go ahead and undo all them fancy documents, Naruto said casually. Hiruzen remained silent as he smiled nervously, making Naruto worry slightly. Old man? Naruto, I'm afraid that the adoption is already permanent, the Hokage said with a nervous chuckle. What? The boy yelled at the top of his lungs, receiving a powerful backhand from Aizo. I told you before, stop yelling, Izo said through gritted teeth. Maybe I would if you'd stop hitting me all the time. Naruto yelled as he picked himself up from the ground, only to be sent back down by yet another strong hit. I wouldn't have to hit you if you just learned the first time, Izo said with a glare. I could learn if you stopped giving me a concussion before you tell me. It's not my fault that you knock the information out of head before it even sinks in, the blonde said angrily. Izo stared blankly at Naruto, which looked incredibly creepy since he was still wearing the bandages over his eyes. He continued to stare until he finally hit Naruto again. That was for saying something so completely stupid. If I ever hear you saying something that stupid again, I will kill you, he stated calmly. Hiruzen and Danzo had been watching on silently as the violent interaction played out. Danzo sent an unsure look to his old friend, to which the old Hokage responded with another nervous chuckle. Neither were very sure of how their plans would go after this unfortunate outcome, if one could call it that. Boys, Hiruzen said, trying to gain their attention. Several seconds passed in which neither boy took notice of the Hokage's rather irritated expression, instead opting to start a small brawl between each other in the middle of the office. Normally, such a scene would have been quite amusing for the old Sarutobi, but he still needed to explain some important things to the boys, and he couldn't allow such shenanigans to continue. That would have to wait. Boys, he yelled, managing to stop the fight in its tracks. Naruto and Izo had stopped their fight in a somewhat amusing position, with Naruto biting down on Izo's left hand, and Izo preparing to punch the blonde in the face. Both looked at the Hokage in irritation, wondering what exactly the old man had interrupted them for. Thank you. Now sit down, I have something to ask you, Naruto, Hiruzen said sternly. Both boys walked over and sat down in the chairs available, marveling at how impossibly comfortable they were as they calmly observed the two old men sitting on the other side of the desk. Naruto was looking expectantly at Hiruzen, awaiting the question he wanted to ask him, while Izo stared blankly at Danzo, who returned the same look as if in some competition with the boy. What did you want to ask, old man? Naruto asked impatiently. I wanted to know what you want to do when you're older, Hiruzen said calmly. I want to be the best ninja ever, then I'll take that hat from you, the boy exclaimed happily. I thought so, the Hokage said with a kind smile. Well, Naruto, to become the best ninja ever will require training and dedication. To become Hokage, you will need to be prepared to put everything you have into serving Konoha, to risk your life for the village and its people, to be patient and learn everything you can to improve yourself. Do you think you can do that? He asked seriously. Absolutely. Naruto exclaimed loudly. Hiruzen and Danzo both adopted an unimpressed look. This wasn't something that one could just answer simply in a childish manner, and even if Naruto was only 7, both men knew that he was smart enough to understand the seriousness of the situation that being Hokage came with. They knew the boy's heart was in the right place, and that his loyalty was practically unquestionable, something that Danzo was ecstatic about since he didn't need to worry about the boy betraying them. Naruto, this is not something to take lightly. I need to know if you are prepared to endure the pain and hardships that being a shinobi entail. I need to know that you will serve Konoha with everything, even to the point of giving your life to protect it. But more important than that, I need to know if you will trust me and follow any order I give you, as the Hokage Sarutobi said sternly, a serious expression adorning his wrinkled face. I know, old man, and I am ready to do whatever it takes to fulfill my dream, believe it, the blonde exclaimed loudly, grinning widely at the Hokage. Izo calmly reached over and smacked Naruto up the back of the head, almost knocking the boy off his chair. I clearly remember telling you to stop being so loud, and I'm going to start hitting you every time I hear you say believe it at the end of a sentence, he threatened. Danzo gave Hiruzen another unsure look. The interaction between the boys was not exactly what they had expected, but so long as they didn't kill each other and did as they were told, then it would work out fine. Despite his methods, I have to agree with Izo, you are too loud and impatient, a trait that will get any rookie ninja killed quickly. You should learn to contain your excitement and focus on remaining silent and hidden, Hiruzen said to Naruto in a sagely tone. I do not see any problems with Izo's methods. They are blunt and get the point across clearly, although they could be slightly more painful, Danzo stated casually, gaining a shocked look from Naruto and a thankful look from Izo. I'm so glad someone understands, Izo said happily. Sarutobi cleared his throat loudly, gaining the attention of his old rival and the heavily bandaged boy, before turning back to Naruto. Well then, since you seem so devoted to fulfilling your dream, I have only one more question. Would you want to receive exclusive training from both me and Danzo, along with several other highly skilled shinobi, in order to get a step closer to your dream? Hiruzen asked. So I would be trained by both of you, and some other people, to be the best ninja ever? Naruto asked while pointing at both elderly men. Hiruzen and Danzo nodded, making the young blonde gain a thoughtful expression. Why? He asked simply. Naruto, your entire life has been full of pain and suffering, loneliness that no child should ever have to endure, while being ignored and abused by those who should see you as a hero. I am ashamed to admit that I am the cause for a good portion of the suffering you have gone through, and even though I only played an indirect role, it was still a role I played in making your life miserable. My inability to stand for what is right and give you the life that you deserved is my greatest failure, the aged Hokage said sadly. All those times you woke up in the hospital, I would tell you that the villagers didn't know what they were doing, that they were too blind to see you for the hero you truly are. I would always tell you that it would all be okay, and that one day the villagers would realize that you are not a monster. One day you would be able to have a birthday where you didn't hide away in fear. But after so long of watching you suffer at the hands of those who claim to be doing good, of watching you hide behind that mask, I can no longer just sit back and lie to you. I am offering to train you because I intend to make up for the mistakes that I made, to make up for all the suffering I inadvertently caused you. Me and Danzo plan to change the village, mold it into something worth being proud of again, but to do so we will need loyal ninja to help us do it. We will train you to the best of our abilities, not only as an apology, but also to gain a loyal ninja to help us return the will of fire to Konoha and get you the respect you deserve. Old man, why do the villagers hate me? Naruto asked hesitantly. Is it because of the Kyuubi? Hiruzen's eyes widened to comical proportions as he looked at Naruto in panic, Danzo doing almost exactly the same but still maintaining his calm facade. The only one not in a state of panic, or sadness in Naruto's case, was Izo, who was calmly sitting back in his chair, listening to what was happening around him carelessly. Izo already had a good idea of what Naruto was. He had been able to sense the foul chakra that was sealed inside the boy as soon as he entered his hospital room. Orochimaru had a bad habit of rambling on about his plans while working on his experiments. One particular plan had something to do with a Jinchuriki, which is what he knew Naruto was considering the Hokage's reaction to Kyuubi being mentioned. He had to admit, he never expected Naruto to be the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, but he wasn't one to judge. Being a test tube grown splicing experiment gave one a very open-minded view on things. This did raise a few questions though, such as why Naruto hadn't been taken and trained as a weapon like all of the other Jinchuriki had, and why the Hokage was so quick to trust him despite him being a not long since found experiment of the greatest traitor known to Konoha. Izo suspected that he would have to deal with a lot of odd and unexplainable things should he stay in the village, and since he was now legally Naruto's brother, there wasn't a chance in hell that he would leave. So, Naruto is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Izo said lazily, instantly gaining his little brother's attention and getting wide-eyed stares from Hiruzen and Danzo. How do you know that? Hiruzen asked dangerously, narrowing his eyes on the boy. Orochimaru mentioned Jinchuriki a few times while he was carving my insides up, and I can literally feel the Biju's chakra inside him. I'm amazed that he hasn't figured it out, the ash-haired boy replied casually. What's a Jinchuriki? Naruto asked curiously. And what does this have to do with Kyuubi? Jinchuriki, meaning power of the human sacrifice, is what they call people with one of the tailed beasts sealed within them. More often than not, these people are feared, hated, abused, and forced to act as living weapons for the village they reside in, Izo explained before Hiruzen could make a sound. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes even more at Izo. You seem to know a lot for a mere test experiment. he said accusingly. When I wasn't being tortured and carved up by someone, I would read. It was surprisingly easy to sneak into Orochimaru's library, and he had a lot of books on a lot of stuff, so I educated myself, he answered nonchalantly. Can we please get back to me for a second? Naruto asked innocently. Everyone was still surprised that he had taken the whole Jinchuriki thing so well, except for Aizo since he didn't really care too much about it. Yes, we can, Sarutobi said with a worried look. Tell me how you know about the Kyuubi, he asked seriously. I saw it a few times, after the villagers would beat me unconscious. It was never for very long, and it kept yelling at me for being weak, but it's been helping for a while, Naruto answered apprehensively. What do you mean by helping? Danzo asked curiously, his one visible eye keeping a close watch on the boy. It whispers things. Most of the time it just tells me to kill people, to slaughter the villagers for their ignorance, Naruto began, making Hiruzen and Danzo begin to worry. I never listen to that, but other times it tells me how to do things. It tells me where to find food, and how to hide properly. It even told me how to properly use the Henjutsu. A calm silence filled the office as Hiruzen and Danzo carefully processed the information that had just been dropped on their heads like a ton of bricks. Aizo continued to remain impassive to his surroundings, waiting patiently for the Hokage to finish this extremely long discussion with Naruto. Said boy was waiting nervously for Hiruzen to say something in response to what he had said about the Kyuubi. Naruto, why did you never tell me that you saw the Kyuubi, or that it was whispering things to you? Sarutobi asked as calmly as he possibly could. He couldn't stop a small amount of worry from leaking into his words, hoping that the Kyuubi hadn't somehow begun corrupting the child. I thought that no one knew. The Kyuubi kept yelling stuff about my father, calling him horrible names and saying it was his fault for it attacking Konoha. I thought that everyone hated me for something my father had done, and I didn't want to risk anyone finding out about Kyuubi talking to me, especially you, Naruto replied sadly. Naruto, my boy, I can assure you that your father was a great man. The villagers only hate you because they see you as Kyuubi and blame you for the destruction it caused, Hiruzen said with a warm smile. But I need to know, do you know who your parents are? He asked. Naruto shook his head sadly. The Kyuubi never said their real names, he just calls them things and yells horrible stuff about them, he said before looking at Hiruzen pleadingly. Can you tell me who my parents are? He asked hopefully. Hiruzen stared at the boy sadly. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I do not think you are ready to know that just yet, and I believe you have already been given enough to deal with for one day. However, should you agree to be trained by me and Danzo, it should not take very long for you to be ready to learn the truth, he said. Can I at least know if they are alive, if they abandoned me? Naruto asked. They did not abandon you, Naruto, and don't you ever think otherwise. They died protecting you, and no one could have ever known better people, the Hokage answered sorrowfully. Okay, I accept. I want you to train me to be the best ninja ever, and once I'm ready, I want you to tell me everything about my parents, Naruto said with determination burning in his bright blue eyes. That is good to hear. I have no doubt that you will achieve your dream, Sarutobi said happily. But for now, I think it's best that you go and relax. Go and eat as much ramen as you want. I will cover the expenses. You and Aizo can come back tomorrow. Your new legal guardian should be here, and I'm sure that she would like to meet the both of you, legal guardian. Does that mean you put someone else in my family? Naruto asked with a light glare. Hiruzen chuckled at the boy's ability to change his mood so casually. No, Naruto, she hasn't been adopted into your family, but for the duration of time that you are being trained, she will act as your guardian and be responsible for teaching you while we are busy, he explained calmly. Oh, okay. But you are not allowed to add anyone else to my family without my say. So, understand, old man? The blonde asked. Yes, I understand, Sarutobi answered with a light laugh. Now go and eat some ramen. I'm sure that Ayam will forget about the ban if you tell her that I said you could. If she doesn't believe you, tell her to come see me, he said with a smile. Okay, old man, see you tomorrow, the orange-clad Jinchuriki exclaimed as he ran out of the office. Aizo stood up from his chair and began walking after his new little brother. Aizo, wait, the Hokage said, making the boy pause and turn to face him. Yes, he asked calmly. Can we trust you to not betray us? To look out for Naruto and serve us loyally, the old man asked seriously. Naruto is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and my new brother, even if we don't particularly get along too well just yet. I barely know the kid, but I can tell he is one of the few in this world worth protecting, if only because he is so kind-hearted. There are many people after him, and even more who would target him for what he is, but as long as I am around, I will protect him as best I can, just to spite that snake bastard that created me, Aizo stated calmly. So to answer your question, no, you can't trust me. I will betray you without a second thought, and I will never serve anyone so long as I live. But I will protect Naruto, and I will do anything to help him accomplish this dream of his, so long as your plans help in that, I will follow along. Now if you'd excuse me, I have a cute ramen waitress to talk to, he said casually before walking out the door and closing it behind him. Hiruzen and Danzo remained silent for several moments, both thinking over everything that had been said. The main concern they had was Naruto claiming to have been hearing the Kyuubi talk to him. The boy could have been hallucinating, but that was a very slim chance. Danzo, I think it's best that we keep an eye on Aizo. I know he said he would protect Naruto, but should he react violently to the villagers, there will be a slaughter. We do not yet know the full extent of his abilities, but if he can sense the Kyuubi so easily while it is sealed away, then I think it's safe to say that he is extremely talented, Hiruzen said calmly. Indeed, I will have some men tail the boys until further notice. But I must ask, is she really the best choice to look after them? After everything she has been through, I am not sure that it would be wise, Danzo said in concern. Do not worry about her, she is loyal to a fault and will care for the boys as she would her own. In fact, I think it will do her good, especially after what happened to her. I am still amazed that you managed to save her, despite her injuries, the aging Hokage said. She is too valuable to let die, both for her abilities and lineage, the old war hawk stated. That is true, she has become practically invaluable to the village, even more so now that she has agreed to go along with our plan, Hiruzen agreed. All that's left now is to wait for those boys to be ready, Danzo said. Naruto looked down at the floor as he thought over everything he had learned. He had learnt that his parents were dead, with no chance of ever seeing them or talking to them, and he had learnt that the villagers had hated him for the Kyuubi being sealed within him, which was something that didn't surprise him all too much. He wondered what Aizo was thinking, and whether or not the older boy was just acting calm in front of the Hokage and would simply ignore and despise him when the old man wasn't around. Despite their not-so-pleasant interactions so far, he couldn't help but feel as though Aizo cared about him in some twisted, vengeful, older brother kind of way. He would hate losing his chance of having a brother, even more than he would hate having to deal with him. Without warning, Naruto was knocked forward by a strong hit to the back of his head before someone grabbed him by his collar and started dragging him out of the Hokage tower. He looked up and saw that it was Aizo who was dragging him, and probably also the one who had hit him. Fear quickly began to fill him as he came to the conclusion that Aizo was in fact only acting calm while in front of the Hokage. Aizo stopped dragging the smaller boy and turned to glare at him. Well, at least that is what Naruto assumed, since it was very difficult to tell what he was actually doing while blindfolded with bandages. If you even think of crying, I will hit you again and drown you in a pot of ramen. Understand? He asked harshly, receiving an extremely confused nod from the blonde. Good. Now get moving, the Hokage is only paying for what you eat tonight, and I plan to spend some good old quality time with sweet little Ayam-chan, he said with an almost perverted grin. Naruto's fear was instantly forgotten as he narrowed his eyes on his adopted brother. He stomped down on Aizo's foot, causing him to release his collar, before tackling the older boy to the ground. You leave Ayam alone, the blonde growled. Aizo chuckled while ruffling the boy's hair. Nice try, brat, but you'll have to catch me first, he said with a smile. Naruto blinked owlishly at Aizo, making sure to clearly gesture to the fact that he was holding the boy down. Aizo chuckled again, and before Naruto could ask what was funny, he was thrown across the hallway and into a wall. He managed to get back to his feet just in time to see Aizo running away from him and out of the Hokage tower, laughing the whole time. He quickly ran after the ash-haired boy, intending on catching him before he reached Ichiraku's, but he was forced to stop suddenly as he felt something that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't exactly an uncommon feeling, but he knew that it was coming from the Kyuubi, and he knew that it was a warning of some sort. He couldn't tell exactly what the fox was trying to warn him about, but since the feeling was so strong and had yet to completely fade, he knew it was important. That's when he heard it. It was only a whisper, as was anything that the beast said, but the message itself was what concerned him. The Kyuubi usually didn't like to talk, preferring to evoke certain feelings and emotions into Naruto and leaving the boy to figure out the rest, but every now and again, the beast would talk, leaving Naruto with small hints of invaluable knowledge or a direct warning of which none had led him astray. This warning was different. The feeling was stronger, more direct and potent, as if it was more personal than a simple heads-up. And this whisper held more weight than the others normally did, echoing in his mind over and over again, making him wonder just how valid this particular warning could possibly be. In the end, Naruto managed to shrug most of the feeling off, but the whisper remained ingrained into his mind, as 4 simple words that he felt would one day come to haunt him. Don't trust that boy. Aizo had a headache. It wasn't one of those everyday ones either. No, this was one of those skull-splitting, vision-blurring, ear-ringing, queasy-feeling kinda headaches. He wished that it had been the results of a hangover caused by an awesome night of many sinful activities, the likes of which he had heard and read a lot about, but unfortunately, it was not to be. Instead of the almost fatal hangover that he longed for, Aizo's headache was the result of both a lack of sleep and having to deal with quite possibly the loudest kid in the world. The lack of sleep was something he had to deal with unless he wanted to freeze Naruto's apartment solid, with the boy inside, but the overly loud volume of his new brother was not something he wanted to have to deal, nor should he be forced to. Things had gone rather smoothly after they had left the Hokage Tower, although Naruto kept looking at Aizo with what seemed like worry. They had gone to Ichiraku's and almost received another beating from Iam due to Aizo's comments. Thankfully, she agreed to serve them and even removed Naruto's week-long ban, something that had the blonde-haired boy screaming in joy about for at least an hour. It didn't take very long for Naruto to think over everything that had been said in the Hokage's office, which in turn raised some questions about Aizo. Said boy had to spend the rest of the night explaining to Naruto what he was, where he came from, along with the definitions for several big words he had used in his explanation. It was agonizing to talk to a 7-year-old when you yourself thought on a completely different level. Aizo wasn't sure how the Hokage coped with it. Anyway, after several hours of explaining things to Naruto, Aizo awaited some form of negative reaction from his adopted sibling. What he got was not what he expected. Without so much as a shocked look, Naruto simply said cool and cooked himself some ramen, completely ignoring Aizo's gobsmacked expression. Needless to say, Naruto didn't ask too many more questions after that. So now here he was, waiting patiently for Naruto to finally wake up so they could go and visit the Hokage again and find out who was now their legal guardian. Aizo didn't know anyone in the village, and he wasn't sure if Naruto had any ideas on who it might be. But one thing was for certain, if this person wasn't right for the job, or did anything against Naruto, they would die a very slow and very painful death by being frozen alive. I wonder what it feels like to get frozen, he thought to himself. Due to his condition, Aizo couldn't feel the cold, or be affected by the cold either, meaning he couldn't freeze. It would have been very helpful had he been required to fight someone from the Yuki clan, but that clan had long since died out. His condition also gave him a high immunity to heat as well, since his core body temperature was so drastically low that it would take some extreme heat to actually cause him any harm, but without further training, a strong fire jutsu would probably do the trick. Unfortunately, this also made sleeping rather challenging, since as soon as he was unconscious he would lose control over his chakra and it would freeze everything around him. Naruto may have been annoying as hell, but that didn't mean he wanted to freeze the kid's apartment. An irritated sigh escaped Aizo as he wondered if he would have to wake his brother up himself. He made a note to sort that problem out quickly, more so if Naruto wanted to become a ninja. A loud knock on the door distracted him from his evil plans on how to wake up Naruto, and whilst muttering some choice curses, Aizo got up and walked to the door. During his short little walk through the apartment, he was once again reminded of the true extent of how much of a shithole the place really was. He doubted that it was because Naruto was messy, and more likely had something to do with the glares and disgusted looks the blonde was receiving from the general population. Aizo wasn't stupid, far from it in fact. If he was stupid, Orochimaru would have killed him long ago. But with intelligence came realization, and most of what he realized about Naruto's situation wasn't all too pleasing. He knew it was safe to assume that the people of Konoha hated the boy for being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, despite the fact that most of them should know better. This realization, however, raised a very important question for Aizo. If the village hated Naruto, an easily likable little boy, simply because he was a Jinchuriki, then what the hell would they do once they found out that he was a force-grown experiment created by the village's most notorious traitor? Aizo wasn't entirely sure if he wanted to find out, but he was also confident in his ability to look after himself should problems arise. The main issue was looking after Naruto. He opened the door sharply, noting that whoever it was took a cautious step back. As he did so, he also heard the almost inaudible gasp from the person, likely a reaction from seeing a boy covered in bandages. Aizo wasn't entirely sure whether or not it would be wise to let people know that he could literally smell the difference between male and female, particularly the woman standing at the door, since it might get him beaten again. Aizo wasn't an impatient person, most of the time, but after a few seconds of silence, he was beginning to get annoyed by whoever the hell was standing in front of him. He could already get a good read of her chakra, which was somewhat small compared to both himself and Naruto, and he could clearly tell that she had no ill intentions by being here. If anything, she was overly nervous for reasons he wasn't sure of. Hello, are you Naruto Uzumaki? She asked meekly. Aizo quirked an eyebrow at that question, something that went completely unseen thanks to the bandages around his eyes and forehead. Shouldn't a member of Anbu know what Naruto looks like, considering his unique circumstances? He asked back. The woman took another small step back from the door, making sure to observe the boy in front of her more closely. From what she could see, he was a simple civilian boy that was covered in bandages, something that had shocked her at first since whatever injuries he had must have been severe to warrant such excessive use of the material. The fact that his eyes were completely covered by the bandages was also a noteworthy fact, since she knew that there was no way he could see her unless he was a Hyuga. How do you know I'm an Anbu? She asked with much more confidence than before. And who are you, or more importantly, how much do you know about Uzumaki's condition? I am Aizo Uzumaki, Naruto's older brother, meaning that I am privileged to any and all information about my family. As for how I know you are an Anbu, well, let's just say that those masks you all wear kinda give it away, Aizo answered casually. Where is Uzumaki? She asked calmly, although she was keeping a close eye on the blind kid. He is still asleep. Would you like me to wake him up? He asked hopefully. No, that's okay, Il will just come back another time, she replied. The woman turned to walk away, only to find a dome of solid ice surrounding her, blocking her in the doorway. What the hell, how did I not notice this? She thought in slight panic. Ice was, for a lack of better words, a very fucking rare element to be seen used. It was also notorious for being highly deadly even in the hands of a novice. I haven't been in this village too long, but even I know that a member of Anbu does not simply drop by people's houses without some kind of message from the Hokage, even more so when the owner of said residence is the local Jinchuriki, Aizo stated calmly. So tell me, why are you looking for my brother? He asked. Aizo was more than prepared to wait patiently for a reply. He did have her cornered after all. So long as he maintained the ice dome, she wouldn't be going anywhere. That said, he wasn't in any way ready for her to release a surprisingly powerful pulse of chakra that not only threw him off his feet, but also shattered his ice dome. He didn't need to check to know that she was long gone by the time he hit the floor. Note to self, do not try to bluff Anbu, he though with a mental groan. Although the ice dome he had made looked solid and sturdy, it was nothing more than a thin sheet. A simple punch would have been enough to break it. Of course, the Anbu didn't know that, hence the overkill of a chakra pulse. Let it not need be said that Aizo had learned a valuable and painful lesson. Aizo, what happened? Naruto asked tiredly as he stumbled out of his room. Naruto, do you know any Anbu? Aizo asked calmly. Not really. There used to be one with a dog mask and another with a weasel mask. They were both nice, and they actually guarded me like they were supposed to, the blonde answered. Interesting, Aizo muttered, still laying on the floor where he was thrown. Well, that settles that then. Hurry up and get ready. We still need to go meet the Hokage, he said, finally getting back to his feet and dusting himself off. Don't worry about the old man. He usually has so much paperwork that he loses track of time. We could show up tomorrow and he wouldn't notice, Naruto replied. Aizo gave Naruto a blank stare. If we are late, I will personally get you banned from Ichiraku's for a month, he said, his calm tone not once betraying his growing amusement. Naruto's eyes snapped open from their half-lidded state as he stared at his brother in horror. Normally he would have called such a statement an obvious bluff, but since he couldn't read Aizo's expressions, and he honestly didn't know the older boy all too well, it simply wasn't worth the risk. Within seconds, Naruto was dressed and ready to go, even going so far as to literally drag Aizo out of the apartment and towards the Hokage tower. Hee, thank Kami I found his kryptonite, Aizo cheered mentally. If Naruto was this easy to manipulate, then the future was going to be a cakewalk. Hiruzen glared at the piles of paperwork on his desk, Danzo watching on from the side with barely concealed amusement. They were both awaiting the eventual arrival of Naruto and Aizo, whom would be meeting their new legal guardian. He hoped that the boys would take a liking to her, for all of their sakes. The old Hokage glanced over at his friend, taking notice of the amusement in the man's eye, and felt the need to drag the smug bastard down with him. You know, Danzo, now that we are working together to better the village, perhaps we should divide the paperwork evenly, to help you keep track of what's happening throughout the village, the old Sarutobi suggested with a smirk. I already receive copies of all the paperwork you get, aside from the more important documents, of course, Danzo replied calmly. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes dangerously. And how exactly do you have the time to not only look over all the paperwork I get, but also give orders to root and complete all the paperwork that comes with that? He asked seriously. You mean you don't know the secret? Danzo asked in mock disbelief. What the secret? Why the secret of paperwork, of course. What secret of paperwork? Sarutobi yelled in frustration. Danzo smirked victoriously. I'm not sure if I should tell you. After all, it is a forbidden technique passed down from the second Hokage, our own sensei, he said smugly. That's impossible. If such a technique existed, I would know about it. I know almost every single jutsu of our sensei. That aside, why wasn't I told of this technique, and how did Minato conquer his paperwork? Hiruzen asked in confusion. You were not told because by the time you were instated as Hokage, Sensei had sacrificed himself and therefore could not tell you of the technique himself. As for Minato, he used the exact same technique that Tobirama did, the old warhawk explained casually. Then how do you know of it? The Hokage asked. Please, Sarutobi, have more faith in my abilities. You might keep it locked up, but the Forbidden Scroll of Seals is still not out of my reach, and I have read over its contents many times, Danzo answered, hinting quite clearly to the secret. Wait a minute. Secret technique, passed down from Tobirama Sensei, written in the Scroll of Seals, but only one technique in that scroll could be used for Kami. I'm an idiot, Hiruzen thought with a depressed sigh. It's shadow clones, isn't it? He asked in a defeated tone. Danzo chuckled lightly. Yes, it is. I'm amazed it took you so long to figure it out, considering your title as the god of Shinobi, he answered. Hiruzen grunted unintelligibly before quickly forming a single hand sign, 3 solid clones quickly appearing in his office as he did so. With a content smile on his wrinkled face, Hiruzen leant back into his soft chair, lighting up his smoking pipe as he did. Isn't smoking in your office setting a bad example for anyone who might walk in, such as 2 young boys that we just so happen to be expecting? Danzo asked with a raised eyebrow. Don't worry, Naruto is oblivious to anything that doesn't involve becoming a ninja or Hokage, and I'm sure Aizo is mature enough to overlook it, Hiruzen said casually. Are you sure about that? During his time in the Root Medical Facility, I saw that boy make it snow in his room. It took us an entire day to dig him out, the crippled elder said with a small laugh. That is odd, but I'm sure he had his reasons, the Hokage said. He said it was because he wanted to kill the dull mood, Danzo said emotionlessly. Well, on the bright side, at least we know him and Naruto will get along, eventually, Sarutobi said quietly. The door, which had been replaced due to damages, was thrown open harshly, a mop of spiky blonde hair quickly rushing into the room shortly after. Hiruzen shook his head and sighed as Naruto unceremoniously dropped Izo, who he had been dragging, onto the floor. The orange-clad boy crossed his arms and grinned triumphantly before being viciously kicked across the room and into the wall. Even the normally emotionless Danzo watched on with a wide eye as Izo staggered to his feet, glaring at the blonde-haired boy he had just kicked. Old man, I am going to kill him, Izo growled through gritted teeth. You bastard, that hurt. Naruto yelled as he stomped back to Izo. Maybe you should have stopped dragging me when I yell at you to stop dragging me, Izo exclaimed. You weren't walking fast enough, the young Jinchuriki muttered. How am I supposed to walk when I'm being dragged? The ash-haired boy yelled in frustration. Ahem. Danzo cleared his throat loudly, maintaining a stern look at the boys. Izo and Naruto quickly turned away from each other with a huff, crossing their arms and pouting childishly. Hiruzen observed the reaction with great interest before turning a curious gaze to his old rival. How did you do that? He asked. You know, Hiruzen, the fact that you keep asking me how to do things is making me question your reliability as Hokage, Danzo said with mock concern. Hey old guys, aren't we missing someone? Izo asked, still maintaining a slight pout. I don't think so, you and Naruto are here, so am I, and Danzo, Hiruzen replied, gesturing to those in the room as he named them. Yes, and so are the 4 Anbu. What about that one somewhat important person who we are actually here to meet? Izo asked pointedly. Oh, that person, the Hokage said in realization. I was expecting her to be here by now, but I'm sure she has her reasons. It shouldn't be much longer before she arrives, he assured. Almost on cue, a gentle knock was heard from the door, which had somehow closed itself after being thrown open by Naruto. It opened, and from behind it, a woman dressed in standard Anbu attire, complete with white porcelain mask, walked in hurriedly. Unlike standard Anbu, however, her mask didn't represent an animal, instead only being decorated by 2 purple markings going diagonally down her cheeks. She quickly walked past Naruto and Izo, before bowing to the Hokage and Danzo. Lord Hokage, Lord Danzo, forgive me for being late, she said quietly, trying to hide her already masked face behind her long black hair. It's fine, but might I ask what kept you? Danzo inquired curiously. Of course, Lord Danzo, I seem to have misplaced my sword, she answered meekly. You mean this sword? Izo asked cheekily, holding out a long katana with a dull red sheath that he had pulled out from somewhere. The Anbu woman spun on her heels and pointed accusing at Izo, who in turn pointed back at her. You! They both yelled angrily. Give me back my sword, you little brat, the woman yelled, lunging at the weapon. Izo ducked under her, watching as she masterfully twisted herself in the air to land back on her feet. No way in hell, not until you apologize for throwing me 7 damn feet through the air, he exclaimed. I take it you two have met before? Hiruzen asked with a light chuckle. Sure we have, we're good pals actually. She showed up at the apartment this morning asking for Naruto, and when I asked why, she tried to simply walk away. Apparently blocking her off with ice was a mistake on my part cause she knocked me off my feet and disappeared, Izo explained. You stole my sword, be grateful you're still alive, the woman screamed. Kana, Danzo said calmly, making the woman instantly stop glaring at Izo and bow her head. Sorry Lord Danzo, she apologized. Kana, the Hokage asked curiously. Danzo gave his friend a pointed look that instantly answered his question. He would have preferred it if Kana had have arrived before the boys did so he could explain some things to Hiruzen and make a general plan of how to go about the introductions, but that had been simple wishful thinking at the time and he would just have to make do as it was. "Oh right, Kana. Sorry for that. I'm starting to get forgetful in my old age, you see," Hiruzen said jokingly, trying to play off his previous question. Naruto bought it, like the dense moron he always acted as, but Aizo was far more observant. He could easily tell that Kana was not her real name, not that he was expecting to learn her actual name anytime soon. He understood one's need for secrecy, especially as a member of Anbu, but it wouldn't stop him from being cautious of this woman. Aizo the Hokage began in a slightly serious manner. "Would you please give Kana back her sword?" he asked kindly. "I don't know, do I get an apology?" Aizo asked, still maintaining a death grip on the katana. Hiruzen looked at Kana questioningly, smirking when the woman crossed her arms and turned to the blindfolded boy with an annoyed huff. "I'm sorry for knocking you to the ground," Kana muttered irritably. "Now do I get an apology for you blocking me in the doorway with ice?" she asked harshly. "Do you want the sword back?" Aizo asked quickly, receiving a nod from the woman. "Then no," he answered simply. Kana growled at Aizo, completely ignoring the fact that he had acknowledged her nod despite not being able to see it. "You aren't making a good first impression, boy," she said through gritted teeth. "Neither are you. Seriously, how rude must you be to still wear that mask in front of the children you are practically going to be the mother of?" "I'm offended." Aizo countered in mock hurt, going so far as to dramatically clutch at his chest. "Actually, you do make a point. But I'm afraid that due to specific circumstances, Kana's identity must still remain a secret. Even to you boys, for now anyway," the Hokage said sadly. Naruto whined pitifully. Kana's agitated posture quickly changed to a gentler one as she walked over and ruffled the blonde spiky hair. "Don't worry, Naruto, you don't need to know who I am for us to get along," she said cheerfully. "I suppose," Naruto said with a small smile as he leaned into her hand. Kana had to stop herself from crushing the boy in a hug. It was bad enough that the small blonde had, in her own opinion, completely adorable whisker marks on his cheeks, but the fact that he reminded her so much of an old friend of hers made not squealing cute quite difficult. Luckily, she would not humiliate herself like that in front of the Hokage or Danzo, nor would she let down her guard while around the blind thief. "Anyway, as you have already guessed, this is Kana, your official legal guardian. She will look after you, teach you, and be there for you when either I or Danzo are not available," the old Sarutobi explained. "Does that mean she's gonna come live with us?" Naruto asked hopefully. "No. Your apartment is not suited to house 3 people, even if 2 are only children, therefore, you will be moving into a much larger apartment that is located closer to the Hokage Tower. Should you need anything, you can simply come and ask me. You will have a week to get accustomed with your new living space before starting your training," Hiruzen explained. "You will spend the first year learning under Danzo, while Kana here fills in any and all blanks. Then you will spend the next year learning from me, while Kana once again fills in any blanks. After that, you will each pick which one of us you prefer to train under for the following 3 years. Any training you choose to do in your free time is completely up to you, as is any training you wish to continue after the 5 years you are committing to." "Do you agree with these terms?" the aged Hokage asked seriously. "Yes," exclaimed Naruto, who was now grinning like an idiot. "I don't have anything better to do," Aizo said with a shrug. "I'll just take that as an enthusiastic yes," Hiruzen mumbled. "Anyway, you boys should go and pack all of your things, well, Naruto's things, and wait for Kana here to take you to your new home," he said. Naruto yelled out excitedly and ran out of the office, making Danzo, Hiruzen, and Aizo all shake their heads at his antics. Kana giggled quietly but otherwise didn't react. Aizo quickly began walking after his brother, choosing to keep any questions to himself for now. "Oh, Aizo," Kana said in a sickeningly sweet voice. "Can I have my sword back now, please?" she asked just as sweetly. Aizo grumbled but tossed the bladed weapon to her without complaint before walking out. Kana made sure to do a quick inspection of her sword before strapping it to her back and turning to address the Hokage. Kana, why were you at Uzumaki's apartment earlier? Danzo asked curiously. I was hoping to meet the boy before I was introduced to him as his guardian. I wasn't sure how he would react to a complete stranger being given authority over him, and I was impressed by his acceptance of it, Kana answered. A risky move since Naruto has learned not to trust my Anbu anymore, even in spite of that emotional mask he always wears. I suggest you don't hold it against him should he choose to not open up to you, but I wouldn't put anything past him at the moment. Growing up without any family in a village that hates you could breed any number of personality issues. For all we know, he might be quick to accept you as a mother figure in the same way he was quick to accept Izo as a brother, Sarutobi said. Speaking of which, although he did spend a few weeks under observation in the Root Medical Facility, and even though I would like to trust him, we will need you to keep an eye on Izo. Having spent his entire life as a test experiment, I can't imagine how he would react should anyone become aggressive. So far he seems fine, but we simply cannot risk him going on a rampage, not with his abilities, Danzo said seriously. Is there anything I should know about him? Perhaps something about his abilities. I have already witnessed his manipulation of ice, which although weak was quite impressive, Kana said. Hiruzen pulled a file out from under his desk and passed to her. After a few moments of giving its contents a brief read over, Kana gave the elderly men what they assumed was a disbelieving stare. It was nearly impossible to know exactly what kind of expression she was wearing while she still had her mask on. Is this serious? She asked hesitantly. Yes, or at least that's all the information we could gather from the facility we found him in. The validity of that file has yet to be proven, but until we can safely test his abilities, we will simply have to take precautions, Danzo explained. I understand your uncertainty, but I still find some of these things very hard to believe. Could Orochimaru really create such a monster? Kana asked. I would advise you to not call him that, ever the Hokage said with a light glare. His presumed abilities might very well be unnatural, but Izo is still just a boy. A slightly violent and perverted boy at that, but still a boy. Should his origins become known to the civilians, he could suffer the same, if not worse treatment from them than Naruto does, and will need people to trust, he explained, a sour look forming on his face as he mentioned the civilians. That's why we adopted him into the Uzumaki family. Naruto, although slightly dense and annoying, is not one to refuse a potential friend, and we desperately need for them to build ties to this village. As it stands, we should have no problem keeping them loyal, but should something happen before we can instill changes to this village, then we could lose both of them, the old war hawk stated. And I assume that I am also a part of this plan, acting as a mother and all, the Anbu woman asked calmly. We can understand your apprehension for such a request, but with your prior experience and current circumstances, we couldn't find anyone more suited to the job, Hiruzen answered. No, it's fine. I have had enough time to recover from that incident. I should not let it interfere with fulfilling my duties to this village. But I must ask, is this mission temporary, or should I prepare to be adopted into Naruto's family as well? She asked with a hint of amusement. The aged Hokage gave a glance to his old rival before turning to Kana with a serious expression. If you find yourself getting truly attached to the boys, then I will have no problem making it official, but considering your lineage it might cause some uprise with the council, he said. I understand. I will go and take the boys to the apartment. See you in a week, Kana said happily, waving lazily as she walked to the door. One more thing, the Hokage said, making her stop and turn back around. I am leaving your identity up to you. Should you choose to make yourself known, whether to the public or individuals, I will not stop you, he said with a smile. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Kana said quietly before walking out of the office and towards Naruto's apartment. Kushina, Minato, it seems I will be able to keep my promise after all, she thought to herself. I just hope it will make a difference.
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.